The atheist overlords found some guy to interrogate. Can he possibly hope to escape? Let's find out.
This isn't your first time here, you know the rules. You have 60 seconds for each question.
Wait, is it a game show? I thought it was an interrogation. It looks like one. Then again, the guy doesn't look too nervous. He also doesn't look very excited. Bro, you're on a game show. If you're not feeling it, at least put on the act.
Can God create a stone bigger than himself? It's illogical to answer these types of questions.
We got a timer and everything going on. This is serious, and definitely more a game show than an interrogation. Although it's kind of an interrogation too. I'm not real sure what tone they're going for with this.
I'm not saying there's no answer, but it's not logical to answer this question because it is a paradox.
That horror movie soundtrack in the background really is not helping things. Nor is the weird, vaguely text-to-speech sounding dub. I can't decide if that's actual text-to-speech or someone really trying to sound like it. Either way, it's disconcerting.
What would happen if an unstoppable train and an immovable wall collided? If we said the wall would collapse, well, we noted that the wall couldn't collapse. And if we say the train would start to stop, we mentioned the train couldn't stop. So it would be illogical to try to find an answer to a question like this.
Well, no, the answer is there's no such thing as either one of those things. So when you ask questions like this, it's pure mental wankery with no applicability to the real world. It really doesn't matter what answer you come up with.
If I said yes, that God could create a stone greater than himself, you'd say, I thought God was the greatest.
Hold on, what the guy asked was, could God create a stone bigger than himself? In that case, all you would have to do is say, well, God exists outside of space-time, and size is a concept within space-time, and so it's inapplicable. The answer is NA. It's kind of a silly question. This video is called We Answered the Most Popular Atheist Questions. Is that really one of the most popular atheist questions? I can't remember the last time I saw anyone ask that. In fact, I don't think I've ever heard anyone ask that. Very rarely I've heard people ask, could God create a stone so heavy even he couldn't lift it, or something like that. And then normally the answer is, yeah, God is all-powerful, but that only means he can do anything logically possible. And then maybe you get into stuff about what logic is, where logic comes from. Did it come from God? Is it something that controls God? But yeah, the actual question that you have in this video, I don't think I've ever heard asked.
You're using the concepts greatest and greater, and that's why this is a paradox.
Is it a paradox? It's not even the omnipotence paradox. That's the could God create a stone so heavy even he couldn't lift it one. But this one is just, could God create something bigger than himself? If the answer is yes, then he's not the biggest possible thing, which, do you even assert that he's literally the biggest possible thing spatially? I don't know, but if the answer is no, then the answer is just no. The reason the omnipotence paradox works is because we're talking about God's power. If God is omnipotent, if he can do anything, does he have the power to create a stone so heavy that he lacks the power to lift it? With the intention being that if the answer is yes, then God's not all-powerful, and if the answer is no, then he's also not all-powerful. Whether it stands up to scrutiny when applied to any particular God is really not the point. The point is that's not what you've brought up here. So where's the paradox? Also, it's weird because they asked about the relative bigness of God and the rock, and you immediately switched on to talking about the greatness of the God and the rock, as if they're the same thing. Is that really what you mean when you say God is the greatest? Just that there's nothing physically larger than him? I didn't think physical size even applied here.
So it is an immovable wall and an unstoppable train.
Yeah, but it's not though, really. It's a God of apparently a certain size, and a rock of a certain size, and you go, is that size bigger than that size? Yes or no? Well, Allahu Akbar, God's the greatest, so I guess no. Seriously, I had no idea greatness referred to physical size.
If I answered no to this question, then one could ask, how could a being who has the power to do anything not have the power to do this? So this question is a paradox.
Well, no, you only just covered what happens if you say no. Can God create a stone bigger than himself? No. Oh, well, is he really all-powerful then? And then you get into the conversation about what all-powerful means and so on and so on and so on. But you ignored what happens if you say yes. Could God create a stone bigger than himself? Yes. Okay, so God has some sort of definable physical size and it's less than infinity. Is this incompatible with omnipotence somehow? I guess if you change the question to be, could God first make himself of infinite size and then make a rock bigger than himself? Then if you said yes, you'd be saying God has the power to do a logically impossible thing. But the thing he's doing still doesn't involve the limits of his power, so it still wouldn't be a paradox, really. It would just sort of imply that you might have a very silly belief that God can do logically impossible stuff. That doesn't lead to the proposed nature of God denying the proposed nature of God.
There aren't any yes or no answers to paradoxes. The answers themselves are paradoxes.
No, in the case of the omnipotence paradox, either the answer is going to be there's a flaw in the proposed nature of the thing being talked about, and then we're going to alter that before we go on with the conversation, which is what people do when they say God can't do anything logically impossible, or there's a flaw with the question. It includes some premise that's not applicable. These are the answers. They're not paradoxes in and of themselves. By the way, speaking of paradoxes, I asked my wife if she ever had to do confessions when she was Catholic, and she said yeah, but a lot of the time she had nothing to say, so she'd just make something up. Specifically that she'd lied to people. And I noticed that, yeah, okay, sure, it's a lie, because she hadn't lied to people, but that meant that at that very moment she was lying to the guy, which made her confession for lying true. But that would mean she wasn't actually lying about lying anymore, which meant it was a lie. But in that case it was true, and so on like that. Oh, and also I said something about the cracker and the wine, and she told me they never got the wine, just the cracker. What a total ripoff.
For example, in physics, we don't compare different quantities. So if I asked you, is 10 kilos greater than 163 centimeters, you'd say that this is an illogical question.
Yeah, you'd say it's nonsense and reject the question. That's not a paradox. By the way, your timer ran out. Where's the buzzer?
You'd say these are different quantities. When you ask if God can create a greater stone than himself, do you perceive God as being able to be measured in centimeters?
I don't know, that's kind of up to you. It's your God. You can make up that it's measurable in centimeters if you wanna. Anyway, you overran the timer. We really need a buzzer here. Okay, buzzer sound. Buzzer sound. I don't have much. Let's use this. Yeah, that suits what we're doing here.
You're saying that a single being rules the universe. How do you know this? Can you prove it?
A lot of evidence exists about this. Let me tell you about one.
Just one? Oh, thank you.
In this realm that we call the universe, everything is connected. Everything is connected. For example, for an apple to exist here on Earth, we have to mention the solar system because that's how seasons occur. Everything that happens out there affects the Earth. For our solar system to function properly, the other solar systems need to function properly because anything that happens out there will also affect our solar system.
I don't know, I'd say at this point the desirable impact of other solar systems would be minimal at best. About the most noticeable impact we have from other solar systems right now is starlight, which really isn't that important for us. Now maybe you could say, yeah, but for us to exist and for the Earth to exist, we need the elements, and for those to exist required a lot of supernova events, and that's stuff that happened out in other solar systems, and okay, speaking historically, yes. I'm just not sure how much we really rely on the existence of other solar systems now. But obviously, in general, taken real basic, like, I understand, stuff affects other stuff, and that's important for life and the solar system and everything.
So that's why we say that to create a single apple on Earth, so you need to be able to control the whole universe.
No, if you said it requires the universe, I could maybe get behind you on that. But you need to be able to control the whole universe. You're already assuming right out of the gate that the universe is controlled by someone, that it's like a car with a driver. You're trying to offer this argument as evidence for God, but your argument includes what you think God is in the premises. So it'll kind of only work on someone who already agrees with you. Everyone else is just going to say that's kind of a circular argument, don't you think?
That's how I can put together that this is all being controlled from a single source.
So your argument for why it's all controlled from a single source is apples require sunlight to exist and the solar system requires other solar systems to exist. I claim that for that to happen, a single source has to control it all. Therefore, a single source controls it all. So the actual argument is just, it's true because I said so. Wow, good one, guys.
The universe is estimated to be about 13.8 billion years old. Why did God wait this long to create humans?
Some of these questions are really odd choices. Like, I could see them being asked. I just can't see them being characterized as the most popular atheist questions.
There's something fundamentally wrong with this question. We as humans are bound to time, so we use concepts such as before, after, quick to wait, and not to wait.
My personal favorite is quick to wait.
But God Almighty isn't bound by time, so it's irrational and incorrect to use concepts like He waited.
See, that kind of answer I'm actually okay with. That would have been a better kind of answer for the question about can he create a stone bigger than himself? Well, God exists outside of space and time, and so the idea of him creating something bigger than himself really makes no sense. But instead you had to go and try to sound all cool with the paradox talk, and fell on your face.
Let's explain what not being bound by time means. If an entity, however big, is bound by space and time. It can't operate in a different space at the same time. For example, if I expanded you to a size of a building, would you be able to simultaneously write a book in France, Turkey, and Argentina?
No, but if I was big enough to reach France, Turkey, and Argentina, and I had the right kind of brain and hands to do it, then I could. Why are we talking about this? Why didn't you just stop with saying God's not bound by time and be done with it? What does any of this have to do with that?
You are bound by space and time. Your size changes nothing.
Yeah, but that's only because I'm not extra big like God. I don't know if he could reach from France to Argentina. I don't know if it's possible to be that big. That might be a paradox. But he can probably reach at least to, like, Libya.
But let's look at God Almighty. He has command over your body and command over another human's body in France. And he has command over the solar system, the stars, the plants, the smallest atoms, and even cells. Using this as a basis for my argument, I can say that the Creator is not bound by space and time.
Why, you're only talking about him having influence on things that are spatially distant. And maybe you could say, yeah, but relativity would make that a question of time as well, and you're right. But then you might start thinking in terms of, well, is it really one unified entity? Or is it a whole bunch of weird, localized, spooky spirit type of things, each with control over a spatial domain small enough that the speed of light and relativity don't become confounding factors? I mean, don't get me wrong, I think it's way simpler not to assume any of this stuff, but if we have to...
If he is not bound by space and time, concepts like before, after, now, or later don't apply to him.
I would agree. If you have some entity that's somehow capable of affecting events within space-time without actually existing in space-time, then to talk about time applying to it would be kind of silly. I don't know that such a thing is possible, let alone probable. You haven't given me any reason at all to think it should be. But in your far-fetched sci-fi scenario, sure.
These concepts apply to us just because these bind you. It's irrational to ask, why did he wait? He created time. He is not bound by it.
Yeah, I got the point way back towards the start when you started talking about it. God's not bound by time. Okay, I got it. But you are. You're bound by the timer. You know, the one you overran like 15 seconds ago. Why do you bother putting that on the screen if you're not going to abide by it? So far, it's been 1 out of 3 questions you've actually adhered to that timer on your answers to. Your creepy interrogation game show sucks.
He also doesn't exist in time because he isn't bound by space and time. He is eternal.
I was starting to think your repetitious answer to that question was eternal.
So, can you have 2 eternal creators?
There can only be one of something we call eternal and absolute. There cannot be 2.
Okay, since they asked about eternal, let's stick with that, because for one thing, it's just needlessly complicating the question with something that wasn't asked about. And for another thing, I looked ahead and you're not going to talk about absolute, you're going to just talk about eternal. So the idea that one thing could exist forever into the past and forever into the future, but 2 things couldn't, seems very arbitrary to me. Can you explain this?
Let's explain this.
Ah, yes, thank you. Let's
say we have 2 different colored dyes. One is pink and the other one is yellow.
I don't like that. Can they be red and blue? I refuse to listen any further unless they're red and blue.
Let's grant them the quality of being eternal. Now let's see if this works.
Okay, we're sticking a die over here, and we're sticking a die over there, and we're going to leave them forever, and that's pretty much the end of the thought experiment. They just kind of do what they do forever. They just be dies forever.
So I've granted both dyes with the quality of being eternal and gave you the pink dye. You went home and spilled the pink one, and I spilled the yellow one here.
Okay, and then they sit there eternally being spilled dye. What an exciting thing to think about.
Because we've granted them eternity, the pink dye has started taking over everything.
Fucking what?
First it took over the desk, the house, and then your neighborhood.
Sorry, what kind of dye are we talking about here? We're talking about dye, like comes in a packet, you mix it with water, you like stick it on clothes and they change color. That's what we're talking about, right? Not The Blob from the 1988 film The Blob.
It's taking over everything. It's going to keep going.
Holy shit, bro. How much dye did you bring? I thought we were talking about like a little cup of it. Not enough to take over the entire planet, no matter how long it has.
And it's the same for the yellow one. It's taking over everything.
Wow, crazy story. You know, now I understand the soundtrack you chose.
So now I ask you, if the pink dye can't take over the areas that are yellow, can it be eternal?
Yes. The amazing self-replicating dye can eternally fail to take over the areas that are yellow. Yes.
It can't.
Yeah, it can.
The same is true for the yellow one.
Indeed so. It also can.
If the yellow dye can't take over the pink areas, it can't be eternal.
Why? That doesn't make any sense. If you drop some dye and it starts spreading all over everything, but it can't take over the areas of the other dye that also spreads and takes over everything, then they both can't exist forever. I don't know, it sounds like the perfect situation under which they could. They take over everything, but they can't take over each other's areas. So at some point they've taken over absolutely everything, and they're at a complete impasse for eternity. Sounds perfect. What's the problem?
It is bound.
Oh, so the reason why neither of them can be eternal in that scenario is because it is bound. Man, I'm going to have to start using that as an argument. That sounds like an instant winner.
So, the existence of two eternal beings is not possible.
Yes, it is. It is bound.
Eternity is singular.
Nuh-uh. It is bound. Oh, and hey, you actually finished within the timer. So that's 50% success so far, I think. Sometimes that's counted as a passing grade.
Humans are so small compared to the universe. Why would God deal with such small beings?
The most popular atheist questions. I'm still really struggling to believe that.
I see a flaw in this comparison. This comparison implies that humans are worthless. Worth is not determined by size.
Yeah, I get that. Talking about size feels very unnecessary in a conversation like this. But for some reason, it just keeps on coming up. I don't really get it. Besides which, I mean, it's not like God's bigger than us. If he exists outside of space, then he doesn't really have a size. His size is not applicable, and our size is whatever size we are. To be honest, I kind of consider having size a perfection. Humans have the perfection of having size, and I value that perfection in humans. Anything without size or even existence in space-time really just doesn't appeal to me.
For example, a mountain can be huge, but not alive, so it cannot talk, act, or live.
Yeah, I get it. If you get a pet bird, you're going to value the pet bird more than like a big lump of dirt. The amount of value that something puts on something is not based solely on its size.
By comparison, a bee is much smaller than a mountain. But even though it's so small, the bee utilizes the mountain. It can say things like, "This mountain was made for me." The bee's tools are more spectacular compared to the mountains.
I thought you were going to say the bee matters more to God than the mountain does, and that's why it's in some way worth more than the mountain. But instead, we have the bee can use the mountain, the bee can claim the mountain was made for it, which I find very questionable, and the bee has better tools than the mountain does, and therefore it has worth. I don't even know what to say to that. I guess it's a matter of opinion. I mean, if that's what makes something worth something to you, okay. It's just a very novel way of looking at it to me. It's certainly no way I would ever think to evaluate the worth of something.
Humans also have the ability to perceive, live, be happy, see and hear, and to utilize the world around them. I don't see this even in the largest objects. The fact that humans were designed in this way, no matter how small in size, makes them very valuable.
Okay, so what makes a human worth anything is that you can perceive stuff, so you have senses. You're alive. Already we're at the same level as the bee here. You have the ability to be happy. I don't know if bees can be happy. I've never asked one. We can see and hear, which is just senses again. And we can utilize the world around us, which bees also do. We don't seem that different worth-wise from a bee. I think the only thing that's really different is being happy. And I don't even know if that is different. But good, so now we have a way to categorize people into worth more and worth less. So if you can't see or hear, then you're worth less. If you die, you're worth less. I wonder if that still counts even if you get the afterlife afterwards. If you're not happy, you're worth less. And if you're not as good at utilizing the world around you, you're worth less. It's a strange system. As I said, it's not one I would choose. It's like you're trying to define worth by traits of the person rather than by how much God considers it to be worth. Which is weird because we're not even talking about objective worth here. We're talking about God's subjective perception of its worth. I don't know, maybe you're right. Maybe God just thinks deaf and blind people suck.
It's irrational to look at the human form and think humans are so small, hence they're worthless. Why would God even bother? Because size does not determine the worth.
Right, yeah, that arbitrary characteristic doesn't determine the worth. Other ones do. Of course, really what the question's trying to ask is why would God care about something that's so small and inconsequential compared to him? And your answer is, well, your size is not what determines your worth. These other traits do. Okay, so we can ask the exact same question about the other traits. Why would God deal with something with such limited perception and life and ability to utilize the world around it in comparison to God? Well, it's because perception and life and the ability to utilize the world around you don't define worth. Wait a second. Oh, and I left out happiness there because I've read the Quran and God doesn't seem very happy.
Okay, so an object's size doesn't determine its worth. I understand. So, why does God deal with such small beings? Why does he command them to do things or forbid them?
Weirdly phrased question, especially bringing back the small thing into it. But I think the idea is supposed to be that what humans do has no real consequence to God. What we think, what we say, what we believe really can't harm him in any way or benefit him in any way. So what's the point of all the rules and the orders and all this kind of stuff? What's the point of any of it? I'm reading some of that into it, of course, but I think that's kind of where it's meant to go.
To understand why humans were chosen, we need to understand why the universe exists.
Okay, well, the same question applies to the universe. If what happens in the universe is completely incapable of having any meaningful impact on God, why does it matter to him? I can think of a few answers off the top of my head. I don't even think it's that great of an argument. Or question, or argument in the form of a question, whatever you want to call it. But I'm just saying, if the argument applies to humans, it applies to the universe. So understanding why the universe exists really only sets the question back one step.
The reason the universe exists, the sun rises and sets, the rain falls, and thousands of other events like this happen, so humans can understand the messages behind these events and increase their love for their Creator. So humans seek their Creator and strive to know him.
So the reason God gives a damn what humans think and do requires us to understand why the universe exists. And the reason the universe exists is to convince humans to think how God wants them to think. Okay, that doesn't answer the question at all. Why does he care what humans think? Why does he want people to increase their love for their Creator or interpret messages behind the universe? You're just saying the thing they're asking the question about.
Therefore, it's logical that humans were chosen as the respondents.
The universe was created so humans would get to know their Creator and love their Creator, and therefore it's logical that humans were chosen as the ones to get to know their Creator and love their Creator, and that's why God cares about the opinions of humans. Did you miss the question or something?
It's rational that humans are the addressees because humans possess the ability to perceive.
Okay, and the question is why? Why did God create these little beings with no real meaningful impact on anything related to him, and then start being real concerned about their opinions and the little details of what they do? You can come up with an answer. It's your mythology. You can just say a thing. I could give you an answer right now, but you're in the middle of not answering the question, so I don't wanna.
A turtle can't look at the benefits of the sun and find a path to its Creator, but a human can.
You just said the reason the humans are the addressees of the messages in the universe is because humans are capable of perception. Well, so is a turtle. Also, I've seen some pretty happy-looking turtles. Who knows, maybe they're just putting on an act, maybe they're consumed by inner pain.
A human can understand the meaning of the sun and other things in the universe and can determine who the artist is.
If you say so.
So, it is humans that can determine the significance of the universe.
And you're finished with 15 seconds to spare. That's 3 out of 5 now, I think, right? You're improving. Great. So yeah, why does God care about insignificant humans? Because humans can determine the significance of the universe. Okay, why does he care about that? Doesn't matter, answered the question. Yeah, it completely ignored the point, but whatever, it's an answer. Next.
Babies that die go to heaven. Why didn't I die as a baby and now have to live with the risk of going to hell?
Because you were a lazy baby. All the ambitious ones already stuck a fork in a power outlet.
First, we need to get rid of this thought.
No thanks.
You didn't die as a baby, so you're bound to go to hell. You can say this instead. He went to heaven. Why am I going to hell?
No, I think the question is if babies all go to heaven and have no risk of going to hell, why don't we just off all the babies? Or why doesn't God do it for us because that's merciful? Okay, I don't know exactly what the question's supposed to imply, but I'll guess it's one of those.
You could go either way. The choice is yours.
That's not true at all. This is Islam we're talking about. The choice is God's. You can gather up all the good boy points you want. If he doesn't want you in heaven, he'll toss you in hell. There's no number of good points that you achieve where all of a sudden you're guaranteed heaven.
Humans shouldn't be saying these things.
I can already tell your answer is going to be just great when you start off with saying don't think that and don't say that.
It's against our nature. If I said to you, you'll play on one team your whole life, and no matter how talented you are, you'll never get promoted or demoted. You'll stay in the same team with the same salary and lifestyle. But you are so talented, and if you used that talent, you could get on the best teams and earn a higher salary and live a better life. What if I said, the choice is yours?
I'll stick with mediocrity if it means I have no risk of infinite torture in fire, thanks. And according to Islam, it's no small risk. It's not like 1 in 17 quadrillion or something. It's pretty easy to wind up in hell even if you're a Muslim if you don't do exactly the right stuff all the time.
Would you prefer a stationary life Or if you believed in your talent, would you say, shouldn't I at least try?
No, and honestly, I'm not interested in being on this team. In reality, as you picture it, I don't want to be here. I don't want to play the rigged game of life. I don't want to be at the mercy of this insane judge. If I have a guaranteed win, which is I die as a baby and I go straight to heaven, that's what I want. And if I honestly believed this crap, I would want that for everyone else too. That's the only opinion that shows any concern for other people. I'm very, very glad that I don't believe this stuff because it sounds like a fucking nightmare.
You have the potential to achieve the highest places in heaven. Why would you desire to die as a baby when you have that much potential and never reach that potential?
So you're asking me, sure, you could die as a baby and go straight to heaven, but if you open up a serious risk of infinite torture in fire for yourself, you could go to super heaven. That's even kind of better than heaven a bit. Are you kidding me? I'll take regular vanilla heaven, thanks. It's like if I play the lottery and I win $10 million and I go to the guy and I'm like, here, can I get my $10 million? I don't know why it's just a guy. I doubt it works like that. And the guy's like, listen, I could give you your $10 million right now, but what if instead you turn in that ticket, you gamble your ticket for the chance at $100 million? Except if you lose, I shoot you dead on the spot and kill your family. You think my response is seriously going to be, wowee, sure, let's do it, buddy, that sounds great. What kind of a lunatic do you think I am?
You don't behave that way in any other area of life.
Yes, I behave that way in every single area of life because I'm not completely insane.
And I'd like to ask you this. Is it better if babies went to hell?
Why would it be better if babies went to hell? It's not about jealousy for the babies. It's not like the concern will be resolved by, hey, now I toss the babies in hell, you feel better now? The idea is, why are you putting people through something so terrible, such an incredibly dangerous and risky gauntlet, when you could have just skipped the whole thing and sent everyone straight to heaven and been done with it? Really, fundamentally, it's a question about the character of the God that you believe in, and how much he actually values the people he created. And it appears not very much.
Would we also say we also deserve to go to hell if our Creator tortured them?
What? What are you even asking? Do you think that what these people are saying is, well, babies go to heaven, so we deserve to go to heaven? And if babies went to hell instead, they would say, yeah, now we deserve to go to hell. No, what they're saying is, it's better to be the baby that dies and goes straight to heaven than to be the person that has to live the life. And if God gave a shit about people, he wouldn't put people through what he puts them through. And frankly, if your belief system were true, it would be more merciful to kill babies than to let them live. Heaven honestly has nothing to do with it. I mean, if your God just wanted to say, okay, the people who live a life that I like can wind up in heaven, and the babies can also go to heaven, and everyone else just sort of blinks out of existence, never existed in the first place even. It'd be weird. It wouldn't really make much sense, but it wouldn't be monstrous. But that's not what your God is. You worship a monstrosity. Your religion's a twisted anti-human disaster.
A baby dies in an innocent state. Why would it go to hell?
Same reason anyone else does, because God gets a kick out of putting it there.
The Creator can do as he pleases with his creation, brother.
Yeah, I know it's terrible, but God's super tough and he created you, so shut up. Yeah, great way to resolve the moral objection to your belief system.
We wouldn't be so fussy if Allah created this baby directly in heaven instead of sending him to earth first.
Yeah, wouldn't that make more sense? What's the point of sending a baby to earth that you know is just going to die and go to heaven right away? Why not just create it in heaven in the first place? For that matter, if you know which humans are going to end up in heaven or hell, why not just create them in heaven or hell in the first place? Clearly that was the only point of putting them on earth, to separate them out into heaven ones and hell ones, even though you already know which one's which. Why all the dicking around? How does any of this make any sense for a being that exists outside of space-time and knows everything? And ultimately, frankly, decides who goes where purely based on his own whim.
What does it matter if this baby was sent directly to heaven or was first sent to earth and then heaven?
That's not what the question was about. But noted, I guess, the answer is just, I don't know, who cares?
If Allah has created him for heaven, why does it matter where he goes first? Has he created you to go to hell? I know from many verses that you are not created for hell.
Oh, really? Because the Quran says an awful lot about all the people who are going to hell. There clearly are many, 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 many people who are going to hell in your belief system. And it really does seem kind of pointless to bother with this totally insignificant blip of time, which is your time on Earth, when God already knows he's going to toss you in hell forever. Seriously, he might as well have just skipped the whole thing and made you there. It's what you were made for. As a matter of fact, if he exists outside of time and every event appears simultaneous from his perspective, then I'm already dead and in hell when I'm born, before I'm born, from his perspective. So the part on Earth, the supposed test, is utterly pointless. If I fail, it's because I was doomed from the start.
The fact that he motivates you to do good, that he shows you the path to uncovering your true potential, that he has sent you prophets and speaks to you through the Quran, are signs that he has not created you for hell.
Well, if you end up in hell, the fact that you ended up in hell is a sign that he did, so...
But sometimes we perceive ourselves as having failed his commands, and at that point we think, I'm going to hell.
Who's we? You're supposed to be talking to atheists, right? I'll talk about things like God and hell as if they exist sometimes for the sake of argument. But at no point do I actually think to myself, oh no, I failed God's commandments, I'm going to hell.
And we say, I wish I were a baby so I could go to heaven. But you could also say, I wish I were using all of my capabilities better so I will be granted the highest levels of heaven.
I get that the question was poorly phrased and thought out and didn't do very well getting the point across. Probably because it was written by the Muslim writers of this video and they probably didn't understand what people mean when they bring up this sort of a topic. But even so, I find it amusing the degree to which the point seems to have whooshed over your head.
This is more logical.
Nothing you've said in this entire video was logical. By the way, you blew past the timer well over a minute ago, so you took more than double the allowed amount of time. I honestly don't know why you bothered having the timer here. What does it add when everybody keeps ignoring it? You know what, this one in particular went so far over time. Whatever number of points you had before, however many weren't overtime, they're wiped out. You don't get them. 0 out of 6 or whatever it is. Total fail, awful, even on the most basic level of just keeping time.
These are all the questions that we have for today. We'll be back with harder questions next time.
Yeah, I'm sure they'll be fantastic. Thanks everyone for watching. If you would, please give the video a like and click subscribe if you haven't. If you really like the channel, please do consider supporting, even with like a couple bucks a month. Even a little bit like that is enormously helpful. And thank you very much to everyone who already supports. If you want early access, sign up to the email list, list.logicked.com, and I'll see you next time.